Hello, lovely humans, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jamie Wolfer, and I am a wedding planner, and I make weekly wedding planning videos over here on this channel. So if you haven't done so already, subscribe, hang out, let's plan this wedding together because I love you guys so very much, and I want to see you get through this as successfully as possible. Speaking of which, if you are going through this process and you cannot afford a wedding planner, or you've chosen not to use those funds on a wedding planner, and this is your only source of wedding planning advice, you are absolutely missing out by not joining in on the master plan. It's the online course that I have where I take you through everything I take my clients through, like point A to wedding day, because I believe that every single couple deserves to have the support and guidance of a wedding planner, whether or not they can actually afford a wedding planner. Okay, so be sure to check out the master plan down below if you are interested in getting any sort of additional support and guidance beyond what I do here in these weekly videos. In this week's video, we, however, are going to be discussing something that some people may not care about, okay? Some people may not care at all. Other people may just be here for the tea and want to know what drives me bonkers. And then some of you may actually be hiring coordinators or wedding planners, and it could be really, really helpful to apply this advice to that working relationship. I'd like to take it one step further and say, though, that you could probably use a lot of this for literally any single vendor that you book, because knowing a lot of other industry professionals, I do know that these things are important to them as well. So probably should call it vendor pet peeves instead of just wedding planner pet peeves, whatever. Without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. Let me state for the record, long disclosure coming up, okay? I'm one person. What drives me bonkers may not do the same to another person. I can only speak from my advice and my experience with other wedding vendors. And I promise you that even though this list is long and the phrasing may feel a little harsh, there is very little a client can do that I wouldn't forgive, okay? Because I love my job. These aren't deal breakers, but they are kind of pretty annoying sometimes. So that's why I'm putting this out there ahead of time so you guys can kind of avoid doing things that you just don't know. You don't know any better because you've never done this before. And that's the whole point of this video. Not to let you know, don't piss off your wedding planner, but also let's just make this a really happy, healthy working relationship. And just remember, we are real people with real emotions. And while our emotions aren't necessarily the forefront or the focus of our working relationship, I feel like making this video will help you to see how deeply we feel about making your wedding day a smashing success. Number one, disorganized DIY. This is a tough one for me. One, because I love a good aesthetic. I love for things to be beautiful, and I love for things to be laid out well. So when I show up and everything's all dumped into boxes and I have to go through and figure out where everything goes, one, colossal waste of my time. This could have been handled earlier, and now instead of running around talking to all of your vendors, I'm trying to figure out where all of your candles are because they're in 7 different boxes across the whole venue. Which means that I'm not doing what you hired me to do. This is something that can easily be done ahead of time, organized, maybe a list could be typed up, but when it's disorganized, my setup time triples, just without a doubt. And I've been doing this for over 5 years now. Disorganized DIY is very complicated. Now, how you choose to organize it, it's up to you, as long as it's not a chaotic mess. In addition to that, the whole, I don't know what we're using, so we just kind of included everything, also very stressful, because it's you have 3 welcome signs. I just pick one? Okay. You have 4 hashtag signs. 3 of them don't even have your hashtag on it. So now I'm just wading through stuff that doesn't even matter. So in order to make sure that your wedding planner or coordinator is using his or her time very effectively, you need to be using your time effectively. So on your wedding day, they're setting up and then moving on to the next thing instead of just trying to figure out what on earth is in these boxes. The next one would be, can you just fill in the blank? Using the word just in that manner minimizes the request, or it's a word that's added onto a request to make it more polite. Because if you didn't add that on there, it would sound like it's a big ask. Bet y'all didn't come here for an English lesson. But if I were to have a couple that said, can you just place the centerpieces out for us? There is no just. You have 20 tables. There are 5 bud vases that are going on each table. There is no just. That is a huge request. Or can you just move the chairs from the ceremony to the reception? There is no just. That is a massive request. And again, because you guys have never done this before and you don't know what you're doing, it's okay to ask these questions, but I would encourage you, instead of phrasing it like that, to say, do you think it would be possible to? Or does this fall within your job description? Or who handles this? Is this something that you and your company can handle? Instead of oversimplifying a request and adding it on top of the wedding planner's list, asking them in this manner is a lot more respectful of their job responsibilities. So if you're about to ask that of a wedding planner or a wedding vendor, maybe try to rework that sentence and say, is this a big request? Is that why I'm adding the word just to it? Next one is, it's okay, I'm friends with the bride. I'm like, I had this happen at a backyard wedding where the family was very clear they didn't want people inside. They rented toilet trailers, everything was set up outside. They didn't want anybody coming inside. And this gal came in with her boyfriend, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, we can't have you in the house right now. They've requested that all guests stay outside. And she goes, it's okay, I'm friends with the bride. And I was like, you wouldn't be here if you didn't know somebody. Like, you wouldn't be here if you didn't know the bride or the groom or the couple. Like, of course you do. But I'm also hired to put up this parameter or put up this boundary. Or people trying to go see the bride while she's getting ready. It's okay, I'm friends with her. She'll want to see me. And I'm like, of course you're friends with her, that's why you're here, but that doesn't give you special permission to get back there and get access to this person while they're trying to get ready. It's a little stressful, it's a little extra emotional, so no, I'm gonna be a little bit of a guard person here. That does drive me a little nuts, because it's like, of course you're friends with them. Thank you. Everyone here is. They're either friends with them or they're related or they work together. You have a connection. That's why you're here, but that doesn't mean you're getting back there. Next up, overly long emails. This may just be a bone to pick for me. If you're a fellow wedding vendor and this is also something that's rough for you, show me some support down below. Fine with long emails. It's the ones that are super, super, super wordy that I just feel like if this would have been a 10-minute phone call, but instead it's 30 minutes of reading through this email and trying to find each and every specific thing that this person is requesting, that makes it really difficult. And this probably goes across the board for most professional settings. The more concise that you can be and more direct with your requests, amazing. It makes the back and forth conversation ability a lot more feasible. So if I receive a super, super wordy email from my clients, I will typically respond with, hey, there seems like there's a lot to unpack here. How does a quick phone call sound? Or maybe we can discuss items A, B, C, D, E, F, G in our next meeting, because otherwise we're just going to send novels back and forth to each other. Sometimes a quick phone call will totally suffice. If you can get it down to bullet points or shorter paragraphs, fine by me, okay? And it's not to say that my wordy friends are not allowed to email me. I'm a wordy person. Hello? Been recording this for 12 minutes already, and I'm only on point number 4, okay? It's not that I don't like words. It's that there is a time and a place for in-depth conversations and really, really lengthy paragraphs, and sometimes emails aren't it. Next up, not reading the contract or the proposal. It's not a big deal to re-explain the contract. It's not a big deal to re-explain the proposal, but when it's super clear and a couple has kind of touched on or pushed boundaries on a couple different areas, and it's like, you didn't read this at all. Basically, it's like a combination of the can you just and then adding requests based on, I can tell that they didn't read the contract and then they have the can you just. Icing on the request cake, You are the one that is responsible for what is in that contract, okay? If you are not comfortable signing something in that contract, have the conversation with the vendor before signing it, instead of just ignoring it entirely and signing a legally binding document. I talk about this a lot on this channel. Read your contracts. I have had couples make some pretty unique requests, some pretty ludicrous requests, some things that were never in our job description, never in the proposal, never in the contract. Again, I talked about this in a video recently. All of these situations were me not quite knowing yet how to communicate my boundaries and what I did and did not do. So that's a learning experience that I have had within time. But I've also learned that a lot of clients won't exactly read the contract. So there's a lot of patience and a lot of grace there. But let me be the person to tell you that reading your contracts is very important and slightly obnoxious when you don't know what you're signing. Next up, obnoxious wedding party. This mostly has to do with the rehearsal. Listen, I don't need a rehearsal. I know what I'm doing. I could care less. I'm literally showing up to make the couple more comfortable and the wedding party more comfortable. We've done plenty of events without rehearsals. I'm not doing that for my comfort. I mean, maybe in the beginning when I was first learning how to do these things, yes, I was doing it so I felt better about it. But now I'm like, I could do this with my eyes closed. I could be asleep and it'd be fine. So when I do a rehearsal, it's not for me. Not at all. And I'm happy to do it. We're happy to show up and walk people through it. Not a big deal whatsoever. So when the wedding party is not listening or they're rowdy, I don't need, listening bunny ears or whatever we did in elementary school. I don't need that. But what I do need is just like a handful of adults cooperating for 30 minutes to get through this business so you guys can get to the party afterwards. I personally have not experienced this, but I do know a fellow planner friend of mine has kind of been verbally made fun of, teased, which basically just showed that a couple of the guys in the wedding party didn't really respect her opinion or what she was trying to get them to do. So if you do come across a circumstance like that where your wedding party is not listening to what a vendor is requesting them to do, it helps tremendously if you step in and say something. Again, we haven't seen anything aggressive or totally out of bounds, but it's so obnoxious when I've driven an hour and a half to get to a rehearsal that I'm not doing for me, I'm doing for the client because I know this will make them more comfortable and it'll make tomorrow, the next day, go much more smoothly. And then to have the wedding party not listen at all, I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? Next up, not heeding my advice. Listen, you don't need to stroke my ego by just listening to me, which is ironic because I started off the sentence with listen. You don't need to make me feel better by listening to me. That's not the point of me sharing information. You're paying me a lot of money, because of my experience and because of my skill set. So it's not necessarily my feelings that are hurt. It's the reason I'm recommending this is because I've seen things. The reason I'm recommending this is because you might go over budget. You might regret this. I've seen this before and it hasn't done well. I want to be honoring of the fact that a couple is spending a lot of money on me. They don't need to follow every single thing that I say. Some of them are just suggestions, but other things I'm you should probably do it this way. And I will phrase it in a strong enough manner. And if that isn't listened to and it doesn't go successfully, that makes me sad. I don't think it's right to call this one a pet peeve because that's not my intention behind it. It's that I want to be respectful of my clients' money and of their time. And when my advice is not heeded, then I feel as though we've disrespected their time and their money. Does that make sense? Whew, okay. This next one. Poor performing vendors. It drives me crazy. I cannot stand when a couple of mine has spent money or put a lot of time into working with a vendor, even if it's a family member or friend, and that person or group of persons do not live up to the responsibility or the role that they told the client that they would. Now, if you haven't seen my Frienders video, I do highly recommend you go check that one out because there are obviously nuanced things in a personal relationship, whether it's a family member or friend who's fulfilling that role for you. So I can't necessarily speak to all of those things. Your wedding's expensive. You're spending a lot of money on it, and I am here to make sure it goes as successfully as possible. And when vendors don't live up to what they've written down, what they've promised, what they've communicated, without a graceful explanation for why that's not going to be successful or why things have changed, that doesn't sit well with me. When a vendor gets drunk, that doesn't sit well with me. Not at all. When a vendor makes a bride cry, nope. Not okay with it. And that brings me to my final one, unfulfilled visions. Not mine, but yours. My biggest pet peeve, and I shouldn't even call it that. The thing that makes my heart ache the most is when a client of mine has had his or her heart set on something, on this moment, on this portion of the day, on the dress, on the food, and then that doesn't live up to their expectation, and their vision has been tainted. Their vision is not what they wanted it to be, and they've worked so hard to create it to be. And when this does happen, I will gracefully fight tooth and nail to correct it or to mitigate the situation as much as possible. Because I know what you're looking for. Because I've gotten to know you. Because we've become friends, and I know exactly what you want out of your wedding day, and I know what your vision is. And when that can't happen, I just want to make it better. And I can promise you, as a wedding planner and as a day of coordinator, I always try to fulfill that to the best of my abilities. And of course, our approach is always going to be to fix things to the best of our abilities as gracefully as possible. But yeah, that last one, what are you doing? What is this? So that's what we have for this week's video, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully that just kind of helps you figure out how to talk with and work with vendors, wedding planners, day of coordinators, whatever it happens to be, just so you see some perspective from our side of the thing. The working relationship. We love what we do. Just remember, these pet peeves, they're fine. I don't mind. We can work through all of these. I see all of these quite often. And guess what? This is still the best job ever. So it's like, they're not that big of a deal, but at least you know a little bit more from someone else's perspective in a wedding vendor relationship to help you navigate your own. If you haven't done so already, like this video if you liked the video, and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. Also, be sure to check out the master plan if you need a little bit more support and guidance because you have no idea what you're doing, and that's okay because you're not supposed to know what you're doing. Go and check it out down below. And until next week, bye guys!